20th of July, I'm in Rayleigh Library with Richard Dobson, who wants to share his memories of Hullbridge.
Do you have to speak just from here, is it all?
You could speak from there, just talk to me as if you were normally. So,
yeah.
Were you born in Hullbridge?
No, born in North London.
And you moved to Hullbridge in?
I never actually lived in Hullbridge, but I used to visit it a lot because my best friend at school lived in Hullbridge and they used to keep inviting me over there. Are we allowed to mention names?
Yes.
Oh, well, I can. My old friend at school was called Terence, and Terence Grew. He's dead now, he died in an accident in South Africa many years ago, as it turns out. Anyway, he used to travel from Hullbridge to Southend High School, that's what it was when we were. And I remember he used to get special permission to leave early to catch the bus to get all the way back to Hullbridge. Anyway, he used to invite me over to his parents' house in the drive. Eventually I went, and then this went on for some years. I used to go there for Christmas and various weekends. Then we formed, I don't know if you call it a gang, a group of friends, like either from the school or of the same age group, who also used to, a lot of people used to visit Hullbridge for the weekend. They had caravans and things like that down there, etc. And I do remember the bus. Sometimes you used to get a bus direct from Southend Victoria Station all the way to Hullbridge with the number 13 from memory, to come via Rayleigh. And we used to go down and park at the Anchor, where they still park actually. The drive and most of the side roads off Ferry Road in the late 40s and 50s were unmade, just completely muddy fields. And I remember a lot of people used to work either in Rayleigh or Southend, or even go to London. But they used to come down the side roads in their Wellington boots in the winter, and put the Wellingtons in the hedge and put their decent shoes on to get the bus to come up to the railway station. On the way back, pick up the Wellingtons and go home. It's quite common. You probably know that there was very little mains electricity in places like the drive, and there weren't even sewers and proper sewers in those days either. I used to visit the Grooms for quite over, say, up to 1960 roughly. 1948, 1960. 48 was the first time I went there, which I was still at school then, of course. There was a group of us, as I mentioned, 4 or 5, and over the years we did quite a few different things. Eventually we even ran the ferry from Hullbridge across the Woodham Ferrers, but we had to be licensed for that. So the Rochford Council licensed us as watermen, and for safety reasons, I suppose. And we did that quite a time. And then we used to even run so-called pleasure trips with a bit of a motorboat up and down the river. Wasn't much to see, but see the mud flats. Another point, jumping on a bit there, down the bottom of Ferry Road, these things on the left, they go back to the 17th or 16th century.
There is a picture of somebody's done a little article about the smugglers, and there, so she's done a little bit on there on the website. So there's a couple of pictures of the smugglers and those cottages.
The story we were told was that those cottages were originally built so that people could escape the plague in London if the gentry could get there. And presumably they were down there because it was easier to travel by river than to try and get out by road in those days. Now the smugglers you mentioned around the corner, of course, I knew that very well because about 1950 or something like that, there's a family called the Blythes who used to own it, and their son was about our age, so we got to know him, and he used to invite us in there when it was quiet. We used to play billiards quite a bit. They then went to Australia eventually, and smugglers was taken over by Fred and Mary Hurdle, got to know very well over 10 years period, I think. They were retired music hall theatre people, and they used to go on the circuits, you know, around from, I suppose, the mid-20s mainly. Anyway, they ran the club there for 10 or 15 years, I think. And in those days, it was a proper members' club, or proprietary or members' club. And they used to have dances every Saturday. There were groups there playing music, people used to dance, etc. And I didn't see the end of them, but I think later the daughter and son-in-law of the local garage owner took it over. I forget their name now, but they ran it through. Then, of course, it still goes under entirely different arrangements, I believe. Across the road, of course, you had the old anchor, or the original anchor, which we used to use quite a bit. And when we knew it, there was an elderly landlord and his wife, and he'd been in the First World War. And he was one of the people, because as you probably know, they used a lot of pigeons in the First World War for sending messages, on radios. And he continued when he kept a lot of pigeons down at Hullbridge. Most of the housing or the bungalows down in Hullbridge in those days were left over from presumably the 1920s when plots of land were sold off in Essex and all over. I believe the price was £25 a plot, we were told. And people would have built the cheapest thing they could find, which was usually asbestos.
Yes.
Which would be allowed now.
Yeah, my ex's house was partly, the front was asbestos based, and they had new kitchen, bath, bedroom on the back, so they sort of just had it a bit adapted, but yes, it still got the old sort of balcony at the front with the veranda.
That's right, utilizing the verandas.
Yes.
Of course, they had some people would buy 2 or 3 plots, so consequently very large gardens. I mean, where my friend family lived, the front garden was about 100 feet deep to get to them, and the back as well.
Yes.
So they must have several plots, I assume, but used to spend quite a lot of time, Christmas time, etc. over there. It's quite a good time. And of course, there was no modern buildings there until, I suppose, it started in the 60s.
Yes, some of the shops and things were put up then.
And suddenly, all the stuff down Ferry Road started springing up. And,
with the days when people could drive from Hullbridge to Rayleigh for the trains, I think.
Started to get much more prosperous, etc. The ferry, before we started running the ferry on the weekends and holidays, I think from memory there was an old regular ferryman, I believe his name was Dick Hyman.
Yeah, I've got an article somewhere at home from an old Echo about, I don't know whether it's about him, but it was something to do with the ferry that I think I've got an old bit on. I'll have to get that incorporated into the...
So he eventually retired, and then the ferry didn't run hardly at all for a while, but then we started running it on a part-time basis.
And it still doesn't run?
It doesn't run now.
No.
Mind you, if you're brave, you can go across a low tide.
There's 2 people drowned recently. One hasn't drowned recently, trying to swim across.
Swimming, oh yeah.
Tried to swim from Woodham Ferris to Hullbridge and got carried away by the tide.
Fierce.
I think it was, he'd been in the pub beforehand, I think, shall we say, but...
Yeah. When we didn't know any better, we used to sometimes come out and go swimming in the summer, not advisable. So now next to part of the old plague cottages, if that's what they were, there was the anchor tea rooms for many years. We knew the people who ran that for years. I can't place their name at the moment now. Man and his wife. Any road, and one time they went on holiday and they got us boys, young men, to look after it for them for a week, which was a bit of a hilarious experience. I don't think we made any money, but We didn't know what we were doing really, teas and toast and that sort of thing. Then in one of those cottages for a long time was the people living there was a man called Eric. He was Danish, and his wife Jane, and he was a baker. I don't know where his premises were, whether Raleigh or somewhere, but he was a fairly big baker. And the story was, well, he went to Denmark one week with a friend or two, and they sailed back a Danish fishing boat, classic Danish or Scandinavian design, which was in the crowd for a long time. And we thought, I don't know if this was, the story was that the reason he brought it, I didn't want to do any fishing, but he could get the cheap diesel fuel as a registered fisherman. Which he then used in his trade vans, which wasn't supposed to, but he seemed to get away with it. I can't say that's absolutely accurate, but that was the story we always told. There was, in that period, in late 40s and 50s, there was a real character down there called Jock, elderly Scotsman. I think he'd retired from the Merchant Navy or something like that. But he lived on a houseboat, a large houseboat he'd converted. And he made a living, he repaired small boats and sold them to people. But he was a bit lapdash. He wasn't really concerned whether the boat was all that seaworthy, etc. etc. He, for some reason, he fell out with Jane from the baker's family, and they were sort of daggers drawn. And there was a story, it was quite funny at the time, I thought. Jane met him in the street one day, and she said to Jock, why are you my worst enemy? And he says, I'm not your worst enemy. He says, nature's your worst enemy. So that's how they got on very well. I don't know when it stopped, there used to be a carnival at Hullbridge once every summer. And we took part in it. We used to drive some van made up, and I've got photographs of some of my old friends in the carnival. With some of the friends I knew were established down at the Brandy Hole Yacht Club, just down the river, which we used to visit with them quite a bit. Then, because that was popular and it got full up, quite a bit later, they founded the Upriver Yacht Club, which is right next to Ferry Road, of course, because it's like an overflow yacht club. And we did a fair bit of sailing. I knew a man called Theodore Stanley, worked for the electricity distribution companies, an electrical engineer of some sort. But he was very clever. He built his own yacht, a proper one, 30-foot yacht, which I had been, and my friends, we used to go sailing. We actually borrowed it from him once. He lent it to us for a week's holiday, and we went sailing around Bruntsea and places like that. Nearly sunk it, but got away with it. As far as I've got on that. There's probably things like other details I've not quite entirely remembered, but I certainly saw the development of the
I think this was it. I mean, when I first started visiting your husband then, I would have been 64ish, and the road then, as you say, the drive was then a mud track, but all the people in the road eventually managed to get together, and they constructed one lane concrete thing with feed-offs to each house, and they did it themselves over the weekends. But it was still a private road till 1970 odd, when his family moved from there. But it was, I think, it was still basically a little old shack with a bit built on the back. And as you say, a very long garden at the front. But
I suppose all the roads were adopted eventually by the council.
I think some are still private roads, so I think some did keep it to the private road because I don't think Rochford Council really wanted to pay out for that many roads to me. If they didn't lead anywhere, they weren't going to. I think they adopted them if they were planning an estate at the end of it, which they've done on some, I think. But as you say, Hullbridge has changed beyond all recognition these days.
There was another family I knew quite well because the son went to school. It's my same school, not my year, but it's the same school. That was the Stuttle family. I think they're all dead now. Winnie Stuttle and Sid Stuttle, and Mike Stuttle was a son who I knew very well. He was quite talented. He was a musician, and he later in life lived in Suffolk, and he ended up with 3 music shops around near Suffolk. But then eventually sold up in Suffolk, moved to Devon and bought a farm as a hobby, built a nice farm. A very nice place he had down there for years, but he died a bit primitive, a bit younger than me, died a bit early, a few years ago. But their place where they lived was down the walk off the drive. And it was the same thing. I think they had bought several plots and they got the bungalow. It was quite a nice bungalow in this case, and they spent more money on it. And eventually when Sid died and Winnie moved to Devon, I believe, they sold, speculators always going along there saying, do you want to sell this bungalow? Because they knew they could make a pile out of the ground.
Yeah.
That's very common. Well, they did. They sold it to some builder. And to this day, that same plot of land, I think it's now got 3 executive houses on it.
Yes, I think they've taken a lot of the plots, as you say, bought the small, as they were mostly 2-bed bungalows, and you could put a 4-bedroom house on there, no problem. It's just there, but yeah.
But their neighbours, the Stuttle's neighbour, who we also knew, come across, him and his brother lived in Ilford, but they had got this weekend bungalow that's just used for the weekends. And they had done the same thing, got the land, built this quite simple bungalow again. And of course, as this property boom started getting going, any time he was in the front garden, somebody would pull up, builder or agent or something, and say, would you be interested in selling this land? We could give you a good price. The price wasn't all that good. And of course he put up, but he was an accountant, so he knew all about it. He didn't need the money anyway. And he used to say, he said, listen, if I want to develop this land and make a lot of money, I'll do it myself. I don't need you.
You said you went to school some days. What school did you go to? Was it?
The secondary school was Southend High School.
You went to Southend before the junior school?
Junior school I went to St Helens in Southend.
Yes, yes, the one there, but I know it, yeah. So it's a long way to come to visit people, isn't it, really?
To visit?
Yeah, I mean, the buses still go down to Hullbridge.
It's
one of the most regular services.
At the time. Later, when the direct bus stopped running, I'd come to Rayleigh and have to change another bus. And then, but later, I got on a motorcycle. I came down on a motorcycle, and then since I've driven down there, occasionally still go down. The anchor's been completely transformed.
Yes, it's
sort of a wine bar, restaurant, whatever. It's a very smart job.
Well, I think it's much more a commuter town now, because even if they get the bus up to Rayleigh, there's one every 10-12 minutes during the morning, so it's a regular bus service.
I think it used to be 1 an hour when I used to.
It's a bit cheaper than living in Rayleigh. I think a lot of people still do go down there, but
there was one facet of that when they started developing ferry roads. Coventry Corner up the top. Well, we knew, because we've been around there a long time, that you got a wet winter, that area used to flood. Regular as clockwork. And they started building bungalows up there. We said, what if they know what's going to happen here? And they apparently didn't. People bought those places. If the builders knew, they didn't say anything about it.
Well, something you're not going to tell. I mean, it's still flooded. Watery Lane is called Watery Lane for a very good reason, and on the local news you still get it in winter when it rains or snows. You get Watery Lane, it's flooded, don't use it.
I've driven through there way back in a van, fairly large van. You could go through a foot of water without having to be careful.
Yeah.
Wouldn't try these days, perhaps. I wouldn't try it in a decent car anyway.
No, I think it's quite often that does get flooded. I mean, the caravan park is quite a big one down there now. I think Paul's Lane.
Oh yes, some of those are permanent, aren't they?
Yes, that most of them are.
Yeah. We knew one or two people who did live on there all the time. Yeah. The other thing we did incidentally was we used to do a bit of fishing. Not the most ethical kind of fishing. We would go out with a thing called a peter net. Heard of a peter net?
No.
It's just a long net which you spread across a river. In this case, we used to go at high tide. We'd go down to one of the creeks and put the net across. And of course, the fish coming out as the tide was going down got caught in the net. Yeah. We used to get lots of flounder, plaice if you're lucky, things like that. The other thing we did fairly often would get in the boat, one of the boats, and go up to Battlesbridge if the tide was right, and go in the, what was it called up there? The Hawk?
There's the Hawk and the barge.
The barge, just going to the barge mainly.
Yeah.
We used to know that when it was really traditional. There was some old lady running it, about 85 years old. And when, in the 40s, the late 40s, I think beer was still in short supply. And she would only serve her regular customers. If you wandered in there, you might not get served at all. Yes, it's still going, but it's now quite a good restaurant. Oh yeah,
they've
all been updated a lot. I just remember, same as in radio, I remember when these were very. We used to use the half moon at the top.
Yeah.
There used to be one on this side of the road. Do you know? Going down.
Checkers.
Was it the Checkers? It was a Grey's
house. Where the bus stop is.
Yeah, it was a Grey's house.
Yeah.
We used to use that.
Yes. That was there up until the 60s, and then they knocked it down.
Right.
And they had a restaurant there for a little while, and then it was. Yeah. But yes, there's 2 or 3 of the pubs that vanished. One of the ladies I know is actually doing a thesis thing for the University of the Third Age on the pubs at Rayleigh. Good research. Even the lodge, if you know that one, that's being done up, and it's now going to be a Thai restaurant.
That one down the side road.
Yes, Henry VIII's old lodge. So don't know whether he'd be turning in his grave or whether he'd be.
I don't know. He'd probably improve.
Quite like a Thai restaurant, I would have imagined.
Well, down outside on roast beef.
Yes, it used to be Carvery, but they went downhill a bit, and I think they've now been taken over and they're being done up a bit. But change happens. But around Rayleigh, I think until the sort of 70s, a lot of stuff was changing through, and then suddenly the Civic Society suddenly realised, hold on, what are they doing to our high street? And they've now picked up, and it's a lot more protected than it used to be, and I think
that's the story all round. I mean, I know Billericay quite well. I've just come from Billericay this morning. And with the mixture there, you've got some really old places. You've got some 60s monstrosities.
Yes, I think this is it where they've knocked houses about. But so there is a group like ours that's at Billericay doing the Billericay things as well. So there's they're based in Billericay Library. So if you get any memories of Billericay or that area, you can go to them. I think if I remember the chap's name, it's Jim Devon. Is their chairman?
No. I belong to the U3A in Westcliff, and you know Moses.
Yes.
She also belongs to a writing group that I go to. That's how I know her slightly. And she did they gave a presentation. She did a local history society as well down there. And a couple of weeks ago, they gave a presentation at the hall. It was all on the blue plaques in the district, which some of them I knew, but I'm surprised at some I hadn't heard of.
Yes, Rayleigh, because they've got in Rayleigh, we've got Rayleigh Through the Looking Glass, which is a big collection of slides, local history. The chap that runs that took over from Ernie Lane, who written some books on Rayleigh, and he took over from Mrs. Voss, who used to do it with her husband, and that's where the collection started. But I think last time I spoke to him, he'd got 4,000 or 5,000 slides now he has of Rayleigh. All these photographs that would have vanished. Let's face it, what would happen to your photographs when you go? Somebody will come in and they're all cleared out. I think this is the thing now. My daughter says, you don't expect me to keep all this stuff, do you? I said, no, this stuff's to go to so-and-so, that's to go to there. And hopefully it's there, because I've got a lot of family history stuff and things. But until they're in their 50s, they don't actually get interested.
No, and then it may be too late.
Yes.
But I had hundreds and hundreds of photographs, a lot of in boxes, and only in the last few months I said I've got to put them into albums.
Yeah.
Now I had a lot of slides from the 50s and 60s, and I thought, what am I going to do with these? Then I realised there's a local chap who would put them onto a disc.
Yeah.
So he did that. I then took the disc later to Kodak, and they printed out 140 photographs. A lot to do with Southend, early days in Southend. But all the other prints I got from all over various parts of the world, actually, I gradually got them into albums.
Well, I think this is it. What do you do with them? When parents both died, 2006, 2007, so it's sort of, I inherited all of their photos, some of which are duplicates of mine, but some are of the family that go back to sort of the early 1900s. And luckily the sister's interest as well, because she's part of our group as well, so we all sort of chip in, and we've done some photographs up, and I've got lots of things, and there are a lot of people interested still, but it is until you get sort of towards when you're heading for retirement and you think, oh, I remember that, and a lot of it just goes. I wish I'd got more off my parents when they were around, but now you sort of think, and so much just gets thrown away.
Absolutely.
But hopefully, touch wood, the website will be, when we all go, somebody else will gradually take over, and
you end up in the National Archives.
It will do, because it's all linked to the South East Essex Archive group, and we're linked with the Record Office, so they keep an eye on it and all through there. But with the lottery funding, that disappears next year, so we've got to be self-funding after that, so we're looking at contacting shops for sponsorship and all things like that. It all goes through there, but we're always after people if you're interested in joining us and doing this.
Yes, I've got a few things going.
Yes, I think
I belong to the WEA as well.
Yeah.
Which, so it all starts taking up.
Well, I think this is it. I do the windmill in Rayleigh. I'm a volunteer out and help out up there, so do me a little bit of there, but it's all bits and bobs, because otherwise your brain goes.
Oh, we've got to keep moving, keep the cells moving.
That's the one. Can I be really personal and take your date of birth as well?
Yes, 10th of January 1934.
I won't put it on the website for everybody to see, but it gives me, I can say born in 1934 and sort of remembers this from his childhood.
Just gets into the old fogey category.
Well, this is it. When you're 30, 60 seems extremely old. When you hit your 60s, it seems quite young. And a lot of the people I was talking to on Sunday at the reunion, some of them were in their 90s, so that makes me feel really young.
Well, I think age is an attitude, and
yes.
They say there's chronological age and mental age, etc. I agree with that greatly.
Yeah, I think this is it. My daughter still values my opinion. She'll put it on clothing and things, so she doesn't sort of say no. And she says, you can't wear that, that's granny stuff, although I am a granny. But it's that difference between my mother's generation and mine, I think. And yours, it's sort of, we think of them as old, but they probably were.
What I think I've quite discussed this with various people is the enormous difference between the lifestyle of my parents and what I take for granted, or what anybody of my age group is saying. Because my parents never went on holiday anywhere, never ate out in a restaurant, never bought a bottle of wine. Now everybody does that sort of thing.
Yes.
Oh, of course you do.
Yeah, probably the furthest my parents ever got on holiday was the Isle of Wight. I think was probably the furthest.
Wow. I think Herne Bay was the limit.
Oh, I've been to Herne Bay as a child, and Margate, and then Clacton and Jaywick, because they were reachable by bus from Rayleigh then.
But we used to go on a paddle steamer from Southend.
Yes,
In those days, paddle steamers were there all the time.
The Royal Sovereigns, the Royal Daffodil, yes.
The Daffodil, we used a lot. My friends and mine, when I was in my 20s, we used to go to France from Southend Pier. Well, 3 or 4 times a year. We'd either go to Calais or Rhine. And I've always said since that was a very good training for going on ships, because we've been on cruises since.
Yes.
And we say if you can travel on the Daffodil, you're all right to travel on anything.
Yes, I remember one horrendous one on the paddle steamer. We went across to Margate, it would have been, and it was so bad on the Thames that even the crew were up on the top. And the poor captain was saying, could people please go to the other side if they were going to be sick, because it was listing further and further as we all hung over the edge. But all we did was sit on Margate Beach and try and recover for the journey home. But as you say, that the Thames, even in summer, can be quite nasty.
One famous occasion that we were heading to Calais on the Royal Daffodil, he got 2/3 of the way there, and the sea was pretty rough, and he turned back. And I said to one of the staff crew, I said, so why are we turning back? He said, well, the ship can make it. He said, but we're breaking too much crockery.
I think this is I do quite a lot of coach trips over to the continent, and you get all sometimes it's nice, sometimes it's not quite as good.
So it's like a draw, pure chance.
Yes.
Pure chance.
Yeah.
My big friends of mine say, oh, I wonder if the weather will be alright when we go on a holiday. I said, you can't regulate your life thinking about the weather, otherwise you wouldn't go anywhere.
We used to go, when my dad was alive, because his family came from Yorkshire, and we used to, somebody said, well, it rains a lot up there, doesn't it? What happens if you're up there and it rains? I said, we get wet.
That's life.
It's water, it doesn't stop us going out. We've got big waterproof ponchos, and me, the kids, and my dad would just trot off and wander at the dales and walk in boats, take the trousers off when you get back, dry out.
That's right.
That's the way.
Because we live in the driest part of the country, don't we?
Yes.
In the Lake Districts, we've got 40, 50 inches a year, just like that.
That's why the lakes are there.